In order to test our hypothesis, we decided to use a between-group study design, which, as we know, means that the IV was manipulated between groups and the DV was compared between the results of each group, so of each IV level. So for this particular study, we used random assignment to divide Caucasian children into one of 3 levels of the IV, which, as a reminder, is race of the offender. So we chose between groups design in this situation because we recognize that we're dealing with children. And it was likely that if we decided to use a within subjects design, that the results may have been influenced by a loss of attentiveness in being exposed to more than one IV. So in saying that, in this scenario with the between groups design, each child is just exposed to one video and asked about one offender, which we believe will make the results of this study more valuable and more valid. So we also wanted to point out a potential drawback of this design, which is that we are not able to fully rule out the possibility of group differences. So however, we are careful to use random assignment to better ensure the possibility that that would be ruled out. Random assignment or assortment was also used in this scenario so that we could control for other possible confounds between groups. So now, moving on to our measurement timing, we decided, obviously for this study, it was best to use a post-test only. It's best suited because we're only assessing group differences at one time throughout the study, which was after the child was exposed to the video, which if you go back to our explanation of our study, that makes the most sense because without seeing the offender, the child could not differentiate between a number of offenders and be able to choose the right one. So moving on to our predictions, we predict that the largest amount of accurate scores will be in the Caucasian group, which is consistent with a theory called the cross-race effect. This theory states that people are more likely to recognize, or in this study, more likely to remember, faces that are most familiar to them. For the Caucasian children in this study, offenders with a similar face to them, in terms of race, will be more salient and therefore easier to recall for eyewitness accounts than those of a different race. So, if this theory stays true in the current study, we predict that both the Asian and African American IV groups will score less than the Caucasian. So, for our conclusions, throughout this term, we carried out several different studies revealing details about the reliability of a child's eyewitness statements and have determined that children can be reliable eyewitnesses. However, we suggest precaution should be taken in terms of taking into consideration a child's age, and if you look back on this study, the race of the offender and the child involved.